Welcome to FYI, the Four-Year Innovation Podcast. This show offers an intellectual discussion on technologically enabled disruption, because investing in innovation starts with understanding it. To learn more, visit arc-invest.com.
ARC Invest is a registered investment advisor focused on investing in disruptive innovation. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. It does not constitute, either explicitly or implicitly, any provision of services or products by ARC. All statements made regarding companies or securities are strictly beliefs and points of view held by ARC or podcast guests, and are not endorsements or recommendations by ARC to buy, sell, or hold any security. Clients of ARC Investment Management may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to ARC's Four-Year Innovation Podcast. Today, we've got an incredible guest. We've got Dirk Hoke, who's the CEO of Volocopter. Welcome, Dirk.
Thanks for having me. Hi, Sam. Hi, Tasha.
So how did you come to join Volocopter? I guess we start there. You didn't found Volocopter, but you're leading it into hopefully commercialization pretty soon. So how did you find Volocopter?
That's quite a long story. I try to cut it short. I knew Volocopter since 2015-16. Florian Reuter, who was the former CEO of Volocopter, reached out to me because he knew me from Siemens times, and we met regularly on different conferences and regularly catched up. And I was following the UM side already as CEO of Airbus Defence and Space intensively, also being involved in many working groups at the Baltic Economic Forum and others, following up with the institutional side, authorities, SAA, IASA, to understand better what needs to be done in order to make urban air mobility really a reality, learning a lot about the challenges. And so following from the other side. And then when I left Airbus, Florian reached out to me, first more towards an advisor board seat. And then somehow when I was in discussion for other jobs, he said, "Why are you not becoming my successor?" So this was, of course, because I didn't expect him to step down, firstly. Secondly, I was not prepared for that question. So I said, he said, "Please don't turn it down immediately. Give me some," and I said, "Then give me some time to do my homework and give you a proper answer." So I did, because I knew the ecosystem and the industry pretty well. And for me, it was more a decision, do I want to now continue to work in a big company? Because I had a lot of offers. I had even had a contract on my desk. Or should I try something new? And I was always, I liked the idea about a new modality coming into the market and to be part of that. And I said, if I don't do a startup now, then I will never do it. Also, after consulting with my family, everyone was supportive. My daughter said, "Dad, you have done big companies, you have made good money. Why don't you do something really cool?" So
You can always count on kids to give you the truth.
yeah, it's very seldom that you get from your 19-year-old daughter or 18-year-old daughter at that time that this is really cool. So it played a role. My whole family was supportive, and all the discussion with the board of advisors, with the team, the management team, was very positive. So then I said, I will do it. And I'm really happy to be now part of that team. It's very visionary, very motivated, highly engaged team, trying to do the impossible, because we really want to fly next year in Paris.
And so, Dirk, I think you might be the perfect person to help everyone understand. Aviation is full of acronyms. Even just now, we're talking SAA and IASA, eVTOL. So can you kind of just break down the landscape? Electric vertical, takeoff and landing. Why now? What is the SAA? What is IASA? Why is it so important to understand what those two are?
Yeah, you have two authorization bodies that certify vehicles for civil aviation, and that's EASA in Europe and FAA in the US. They have also an agreement to accept the standards, and so normally if you certify by one of these big bodies, it's very simple to certify then also for the other part, and then also get local national authorization to fly in the national aerospace of other countries. So what we will do is we will certify with EASA in Europe. Will then, of course, apply for certification by FAA in the US. With that, we have, let's say, a very broad access to the global markets, and national application processes are then rather fast. So like you probably have read yesterday, we published that we will have a alignment between JCAP, the Japanese authorization body, and the EASA to make also a very smooth certification process so that we can fly in 2025 in Osaka in Japan. So these authorization bodies ensuring that we have a safe transportation in the civil airspace. And as you know, so far, aircraft are still the safest transportation modality in the world, even in a more than 100 years history. This was done because they applied very harsh safety requirements. One of the requirements that is important in the civil aerospace is that you can have only a mistake, a serious mistake or problem after 1 billion operational hours. So this is what we call the safety rule of 10 to minus 9. So only one mistake every 1 billion operational hours. That's quite impressive, and this is, of course, a big barrier to entry. In order to get certified, you need also to pass a couple of other certificates. So it's not, we cannot decide in our garage to build an aircraft, but we have to be authorized to design and to build an aircraft. So this is called design organization approval and production organization approval. And we have already achieved these two very important milestones so that we are allowed to design and also to build aircraft that can then be used in the civil airspace.
And I guess on that, Tasha, maybe this ties into some of the autonomous work. 1 in a billion mistake per operational hours. How do you get enough data and comfort to accept that that's the true probability of a mistake when, obviously you're not going to be flying this aircraft for 1 billion hours before it's approved. So what type of things go on to ensure that type of safety?
So it's a mix of mathematical calculations, simulations, and flight tests. So it's 3 elements that come together in order to make sure that you can achieve these 1 billion hours, let's say, standard. What you do is that you combine these elements into a simulation in order to understand where are the weak points of your system, which could lead to a critical mistake. And in this case, where you have critical components, you have to plan for redundancies. So in case a certain safety relevant system fails, you need to have a backup solution. So with that, you can then increase the safety criteria. You can make sure that you get higher valuation towards the 10 to minus 9 rule. And then it's, of course, the combination with the checking the mathematical model and the simulation against reality. That's why you have to perform a lot of flight tests. That's what we start, for example. Again, now in summer, we will fly thousands of times in order to make sure that we comply with the envelopes defined by EASA. And with that, we verify our mathematical models. It's a combination of thorough science work and also mathematical calculation, simulation, and then verifying by real flight tests.
And, as you said, regulation is such a big barrier to entry for this industry. Of course, we understand in the theory that this is a really rigorous process. But what are the components that actually make this so difficult? And what are some of the pitfalls that you see potentially other companies falling into?
The problem is that in order to be certified, you need also certified components. So it is not that you go into a shop and buy some components, build an aircraft, and you get it certified. So what we do is, in order to reduce the time to certification, is we use already certified components from certified suppliers that have worked in the aerospace before. And with that, we can then shorten the time for the certification pathway. Whenever we bring a new component into an aircraft, we need to recertify. So this is, of course, a very, very rigorous process. And this is something which at the end leads to long lead times for companies that have never worked in the aerospace. So you need to be able to understand what are the critical components, how do you certify them, or how do you use certified components, and how do you integrate that into a certifiable system. So this is a huge barrier. This is also why components for aerospace are so much more expensive than for automotive, because you have a much more complicated certification process, which is adding then on the component price.
How do you say the regulators have reacted? Typically, I think people think of regulators as extremely conservative. Now there's this huge wave of new technologies being pushed simultaneously by different parties, all trying to get their attention and approve different types of flying vehicles or flying designs. What has the reaction been from the global regulators?
I can only say from my experience since 2015, 2016, but this started already earlier. I think it started mostly when the first toy drones came into the market, when the first volocopters. So whenever you flew a toy helicopter, which is pretty complicated, and then you got the first toy drone, and then especially when DJI came with the more advanced versions into the market, you could see and witness how easy it is to fly a drone, even with very difficult weather conditions, strong winds, and so on. And this was, of course, one of the, let's say, accelerators for the ideas to create this kind of system also for cargo and for passenger transportation. This was one of the key points for our founders to look at this technology and see how this toy technology can be used to accelerate the access to passenger taxis also in the eVTOL area. From the authorization bodies, certification bodies, the reaction was mixed at the beginning. Looking at EASA at the beginning, of course, everyone was like, how do we certify these new vehicles? EASA was from the beginning very open to it. And I even discussed at that time from Airbus perspective with the bodies, and they always said, Dirk, I would love that your team is as agile as the startup companies that look at us, how we can create a certification pathway. So they were open for assessing how this can be certified. So they were not, let's say, blocking it, they were embracing it. And but of course they were looking also on how to make it a tangible experience and a safe experience, because they don't want to put the reputation of aerospace at stake. So this has to be clear. Bringing a new modality into the market is for both sides a risk, because they don't want to spoil their reputation, and of course we want to do business, and we need to make sure that we don't sacrifice safety on the way to it. It was a good communication from the beginning, good interaction that led also a few years ago to the first draft of the certification roadmap that is defined by EASA. And this is now leading to a very, in my opinion, robust plan how these vehicles will be certified. But but this is only the first step. There's still many more steps necessary to make it, let's say, a scalable model around the globe, because once we're certified, this is one important step, but we still need to discuss how we integrate these vehicles not only into what we call use space, but also into the ATM. ATM is the air traffic management of the civil airspace, how we, let's say, regulate the traffic of all the 24,000 aircraft around the world. And this is mostly done still by humans. And in order to integrate now thousands or 100,000 of drones, be it for cargo or passenger transportation in the future, we need to do the next step of digital transformation also for the air traffic management. And this will need some time, because only then we have a system that can handle the complexity of merging 24,000 aircraft with 100,000 of drone into a safe traffic management.
Another question I had. So the physics, at least from what I understand, they're the same. They apply the same way to everyone. And there's different use cases. But even for, let's say, fixed-wing aircraft, most fixed-wing aircraft look similar. They might have different use cases and they might look slightly different, but they all look fairly similar. When it comes to drones, that's definitely not the case. Right now, there's, I'd say, a huge variety in what a drone looks like, what an electric vertical takeoff landing aircraft looks like. Volocopters, it is, I'd say, unique just like everyone else's. Why are there so many different designs, and why is Volocopter's design the way it is?
Yeah, I cannot talk about the designs of other companies and what was the reasons for it. I think the Volocopter design was done in order, first of all, to make it fly. But the most important criteria in the design phase was built to certify. So keep it simple, make it sure that it doesn't become fancy just to be fancy, but make sure that it can be certified. So again, as I said before, use certified components or use certifiable components. Make sure that it's simple so that the certification bodies can understand the choice of the components and are understanding also how we calculate the safety standard. So here we have a clear focus on certification from day one, and this is something that, in my opinion, also differentiates Volocopter from other more fancy designs. And also then you have to look at what are the requirements for the market. Volocopter with the Volocity has chosen to fly within the city environment. So normally in a city environment, you don't need to fly 200 kilometers or 300 kilometers. You need to fly 20, 30, 40 kilometers. You have rather a short hop on, hop off experience. So you have totally different requirements than you would have in order to fly 200 or 300 kilometers. That's why you see the design for the Volo region is totally different. Here it is more about the efficiency of flying medium distance versus the stability in an urban environment that we want to provide with the Volocity. So what is important to get the public acceptance is you need to feel safe. So here you need to see 18 rotors, and where we already demonstrated that we could lose easily 2 and we can still safely land. It's the noise level compared to helicopter is 80% lower. So we could have a normal conversation like that if a vehicle is landing 50 meters beside us. That's not possible with a helicopter. So reduced noise level, more security and safety, and emission-free and sustainable. So these were the main requirements what we said are necessary in order to fly within a city environment, so that we can blend easily into the normal noise that you have in a city. So if you look, and hopefully you can come and visit us and see demonstration flights and test flights, the frequency of the noise is also in a frequency band that is very acceptable because it blends into the normal noise level of a city. So you will not really differentiate the noise of our vehicles compared to the street noise that you have from cars. So we believe it's really acceptable, and this is also the feedback that we get from the public test flights, from the audience that was witnessing and listening to the vehicle in operation. So this is why we designed the vehicle, 18 rotors, mostly for stability and safety. And then the Volocopter with the wing design, it is designed to fly efficiently but also safe. So what we have is we have lift motors and we have push motors. So we separate. We don't have any tilting technology because there you could have easily problems in the tilting process. Here we have the lifting process, 6 or more lifting motors, and then we have 2 pusher motors. So we separate that vertical from the horizontal movement. And whenever you go into the horizontal movement, you go into an aircraft mode where you use the wing, and this becomes very efficient. So it is an efficient way of moving medium distance. This is something that we will use with the Volo region up to 200 kilometers, flying in 1 hour. But also, to be honest, this will not be possible today because the batteries are not good enough yet. But with the batteries that we will get in 2025, we will be able to fly these parameters.
I'd love to expand on that point. We've talked a lot. Clearly, it's a very difficult thing to do. You have to pass these safety hurdles, these regulatory hurdles, but it opens up a lot of opportunity. And it seems like it's empowered by, these technologies like batteries, in the case of unmanned flight, like autonomy, that are now available that, previously were not. So it seems like, I'd love to hear from you sort of, what was sort of the key unlock to make this possible for you all? And then what are you hoping to do for passengers, for cargo? Like, I want our listeners to know how exciting this is.
We look at, you see, there are tons of different business cases and use cases. So first of all, maybe I'm not sure that this was clear. For the years to come, we will still fly with a pilot. And only in the next decade, we will go into automation and then into autonomy. Because the certification pathway, it still needs to be defined. And this is pretty complicated because, of course, you have to overcome a lot of, let's say, biased opinions on it. And we have to prove over a certain time that we fly the eVTOL systems as part of the ATM, as I explained before. So this will take time. But in that time frame, what we will do is we will start with our 2-seaters based on the battery that are available right now, and then move into 4-seater. We will then go and add to our portfolio the Volo region for medium distances. And as you know, we have already cargo drone. What do we do with that? We look at the urban air mobility, different use cases, fly from the airport into the downtown city. Mostly it is wherever you have congestion, it's adding an alternative for people that need to be sure about the time of arrival. It will be adding, it will not replacing any modality. What we also look at, and we have our partner ADAC, in order to look at emergency response. For example, the Volocity would be in the first step. It would bring the doctor to an accident so that we can have a first response in a shorter time than today, and of course in a sustainable manner. And secondly, when we have the Volo region, we have a high interest of ADAC to use that also to transport patients to the hospital. So first starting, bringing the doctor to the accident. Next step is not only bringing the doctor to the accident, but also bringing the patient towards the hospital, as it is done in many cities of the world today with a helicopter. But of course, we want to do it emission-free. We want to do it with a much lower noise level and more flexibility. So this is a very important use case. But then, of course, for cargo, it could be maritime, vessel to shore, shore to vessel. We see interest for, of course, all the logistic hubs of the world. We see also use cases even in mining and other industries where it is about the reliability of the vehicle and the payload. So there are many, many different use cases, and some of them already tested. as you know from other companies, that transport organs, blood, and medicine. So there are a lot of use cases that will make our life easier and better. So I'm definitely convinced that once you have reliable vehicles, we will have countless of use cases.
And in terms, when we look at innovation at ARC, we often look for, something that has a competitive cost dynamics to the systems that already exist. And I understand this is a very nascent industry, right? So first, you're making something possible that previously just wasn't possible. What do you think about longer term sort of, who will this be available for? Sort of what are the cost and price structure dynamics that you expect in the industry?
You see, at the end, the business parameters are driving the development of the product. So if we cannot create a viable business case, it will be a very short, let's say, idea of bringing something new into the market. No, I strongly believe we can definitely create a viable business. At the beginning, looking at passenger transportation, you see there are a lot of statements out what it should cost and a lot of studies. I think looking at what the cost of transportation is, I think no one expects that it will be the same price as of a taxi or Uber. But of course, expectations are high to make it accessible to everyone, which means probably like double the price of a taxi. And then if it's in a congested area where you really gain a lot of time, then it can be even higher. But we also have to be realistic. At the beginning, we will start with, if you do a total cost of ownership calculation, the price of the ticket would be much higher. With an increasing capacity, with more seats, it will then go down very fast. And then once you go into mass production, you have all the balance of scale effects that will easily lead to very competitive pricing. Why? Because the advantage is urban air mobility will lie somewhere between automotive and aerospace. Aerospace has very small quantities. Automotive has very high quantities. So we will be anywhere in between. So you have the balance of scale economics kicking in. Because if you can do it for aerospace at a very low quantity, you definitely can do it for urban air mobility at a much higher scale. So here we believe over the course of time, we will be able to bring the price per seat per kilometer, which will be an important indicator, down to 3 to 4 euro per seat. But not in the first 2 years, definitely not.
And then I think it's also interesting to think about what you were saying about the noise level, right? Because obviously there's the regulatory approval for the aircraft itself, has to be allowed. But in a lot of our modeling, depending on the city and areas with that high congestion, the landing sites and the economics there can make or break some of these models as well. And so having something that's not in my backyard, getting impossible to have landing pads, right? In Manhattan right now, I think there's 3 landing pads. And so what are you seeing? Is that the same in cities in Europe? And what's the regulatory discussion around increasing landing sites?
We have to find new ways because today the certification of a heliport in Europe or in Germany takes a long time. So here we also need to wait now till people understand better the impact of operating our vehicles, which are totally different than helicopters. So we believe that this will lead to also an adaptation of some of the rules that are used today for heliports and helicopters, because the noise level is so much different. And with that, of course, the impact on the population. I'll give you an example. When we did the flight test in Paris, we invited for the last time a lot of journalists, and there was a bus with an open roof, and all the journalists were on top of it. And I had an interview with one of the journalists afterwards, and I asked her, so how did you experience the noise level, and what do you think about the noise at takeoff and during the flight? And then she said, I have to admit that I missed the takeoff. And I said, how can you miss it? You were like 75 meters away from it. And she said, because I was talking to my colleague who stand by my side. So she had a normal conversation with a colleague on the rooftop of an open bus, 75 meters from the vehicle, and she missed the takeoff. So you get an idea about the noise level. And this is something that's why I say it can only be a step-by-step approach. Believing that we can come with thousands of vehicles in the next 2 years into the cities, this is not going to happen, because we have to demonstrate first so that people can see and believe that it is acceptable for their daily life. And once we have done that convincing work by demonstrating that it is an acceptable addition to our modalities, and at the end it brings more comfort than stress, then hopefully we can scale and increase the amount of vehicles, amount of routes, and with that then hopefully come to one day to the dream that we really have a more open network of vertiports where we have more flexibility, not only a few routes within a few cities.
I'd also love to touch on, you said that this model is ideal for areas with high congestion. One of the a thesis that we have at ARC is that as autonomous mobility on the ground takes off, that, of course, longer term, when every car is autonomous, maybe traffic could be more efficient. But for the foreseeable future, it seems like, traffic should increase as you have sort of that integrated travel. If you bring cost per mile down to something that's so low, it might even compete with public transportation and invite more people into the ride-hail market. In your conversations with cities, with regulators, do you feel like that is that talked about at all? Or, what's their sort of view on congestion?
You see, it depends which city you talk to and what problem they have. If you have at peak time an average speed below 3-4 miles an hour, they are very open to these discussions because they see every day the loss of productivity in their cities. And of course, they need to find modalities that they can add without waiting 20 years for a new metro system or building new highways, or asking for something that is not going to be applicable in a short term. Our systems can be applied to any city in a very short-term manner once we have demonstrated that we are safe and low level on the noise side. So we can be used in order to get at least certain relief in a very short-term manner. And as I said, we will not replace a metro system. It's mass transportation is of course the better choice, but you cannot have a metro system in any place of the world in the short term. So we can at least add one modality that can improve the situation to a certain extent and can give more choices, and with that more flexibility in the end-to-end transportation. But I think also what it needs to be understand, we will add only one element of the transportation, of mobility. So we have to make sure that this is totally integrated into the user experience from A to B, so that what I don't like is I don't like to use 4 different modalities on my way to a certain destination, and then I have 4 different booking platforms, and then I have to change my plans and I have to rebook in 4 different platforms because it doesn't add up anymore. So we need also to ensure that we look from a holistic point of view how we optimize the end-to-end mobility concept and how we integrate our platform with other platforms so that you have a smooth user experience. Because at the end, it's all about getting from A to B in the most efficient and most comfortable, and of course also in the most sustainable manner.
And then how about on the business model side? When the first airplane makers were making planes, they were also the operators, and then that split out over time. And right now, I think there's a number of, again, everyone's kind of going at it their own way. What's the decision process to make and operate versus just make and then sell to someone else? And do you think that evolves over time, or it would be the same throughout?
You described it perfectly, because why at the beginning they were operators and service companies. They wanted to ensure the quality of the service. They wanted to make sure that there's no accident so that the rotation cannot be damaged. And I think what you see with our focus city approach now, we do exactly the same. we partner. We don't want to do everything ourselves, but we will partner and do operation and service with partners in the local, let's say, environment. Companies that know the local environment and they understand the problem of the city and how to approach it, but they also, of course, have the connection towards the different authorities in order to ensure that we get all the licenses that we need in order to operate. So yes, we want to be operator and service company at the beginning, but definitely together with the local partners to ensure that this is a smooth user experience. Later on, to be honest, I cannot tell you yet. This depends then on the development, how fast we scale, and it is a journey. And I think we have to be open for all different kind of models. We might become an OEM. I don't see that yet, because I think the difference is that we, as I just explained, we want to be part of an end-to-end mobility concept. And here, this software platform also plays a role. And this is maybe also where we differentiate from other companies in the market, because we build our own software platform to ensure not only that we can monitor the telemetric data of the vehicle and the sensor data, but that we can integrate into a booking platform, that we can integrate into the handling of the vehicle on the ground. All of that can be done in our existing platform today, and this is something that we want to then extend into the end mobility concept. So I rather see us that we will stay involved over quite a period of time to ensure that this user experience is as good as it can be.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think, getting to the very exciting part, 2024, Paris Olympics, that's the goal for the launch. Before we get into anything else, who's your dream passenger? What athlete are you trying to get to the stadium?
Yesterday, I saw an interview with Steven Spielberg at the Berlinale in Berlin, and he said he was asked which movie he liked best, and he said, I will not answer that question. This is the same as he would ask which child I like the most. So you can always only lose with these questions. Of course, you saw a lot of articles probably where it was promoted that we would like to have the President Macron flying into the stadium. This is something which we haven't discussed, to be honest. But of course, if I could have a wish list, this would be pretty much on the top of the list, ensuring that we have the visibility of starting operation, making sure that everyone can see it's safe to fly, it's certified, and we are licensed to do commercial operation. This would be, of course, a big step forward to bring urban air mobility to life.
That's right. You just have to make sure there's a lot of traffic on that day, which I'm sure there will be, and have him pull up the app. Obviously, there's a lot to get done between now and then, and it's pretty near in the future, which is even more exciting. It's becoming a reality. What are kind of the hurdles that remain to getting to commercial launch?
There are a lot. It's not a walk in the park, and we have to admit the challenges are still super high. What we do is we currently in the critical design review of a vehicle, which is an important step for us to get to the final design. We will start this year the flight tests according to the envelopes that are defined together with EASA. So we will do intensive flight tests in order to verify our models and simulations. And with that, in parallel, we will apply as an airline operator. So we plan to have the air operator certificate by mid of the new year, and we will start flying a fixed-wing aircraft in order to get operational experience, which will help us then for the preparation of the AOC, the certificate that we will need to operate the vehicles in Paris. So these are some important steps that we will do this year. And then next year is to prepare with our partners the infrastructure, making sure that we have the processes in place in order to operate the aircraft on the ground, to do the charging, the servicing. Also, we hope that we can announce the routes together with our partners at the Paris Air Show. This would be something we are working together on to make that possible. And then we have to make sure that we can ensure a smooth operation and can make it accessible to as many people as possible during the summer 2024 in Paris.
I'd love to switch gears a bit and talk about cargo. So the work that we've done at ARC has mainly been focused on kind of this last mile of delivery. We've looked a lot at like parcel delivery and food delivery for small packages, meals, maybe groceries, depending. But there's this really long tail of markets that are, all of a sudden accessible and addressable by drones. So what are the biggest opportunities in your mind? And, is the lot, like, I'm thinking of maybe parcel as the biggest opportunity, but is it actually that long tail of all these other industries, emergency services that sort of add up to something that becomes more exciting?
It's the $1 billion question, and we have done many brainstorming sessions on it, and we're still discussing it regularly. To be honest, it depends on the type of vehicle you design. Because you see, like our drone right now with 200 kilo payload with a range of 30, 40 kilometers, it is of course already eliminating a lot of use cases because it's narrowing down where makes sense to be used. You will have, and then you can see it already today, you have thousands of different drone designs for different purposes. The good thing is it will provide probably for every niche market an own solution, and we will see that there's not a standard solution to the customer's problem. So we will see a lot of different variation in order to approach the market. So I don't think we can, with one design, cope with all the requirements of the different markets. What we will do is we will focus on the more sophisticated markets, which is the higher payload, because you will see there are a lot of drone providers, let's say below 50 kilos or even below 10 kilos. It's even, I cannot count the amount of drone providers that exist today already in the market in different countries and that run successful tests already all over the world globe. But for the 200 kilo plus market, it's quite limited, because then you need a lot of aeronautical experience. You need also to understand the different steps from automation towards autonomy. It's becoming much more complicated when you fly beyond the visual line of sight, and also, of course, to get a certificate to fly over crowds. So here we believe we can differentiate because we have the experience also from the certification process for the passenger drones, and in the combination with what we do on the sensors and on the automation on the software side towards automation and autonomy on the cargo drone side, we have a beneficial overlap in both directions, which helps us to define the use case. As I said, one of the big use cases we believe in is vessel to shore and shore to vessel, because here, if you look at the thousands of container ship and big logistic hubs and the need of transportation between the vessel and the harbor, here is definitely already quite a significant use case. And then can then be extended to, in our case, not the last mile concept, but rather hub to hub concepts where we can add, let's say, time critical and expensive freight, where you want to be sure that it's arriving at a certain point of time. Here we can add an additional option in order to make logistics more efficient and flexible.
Got it. And on the autonomy side, I've heard other people in the drone industry will sometimes say, well, actually for flight, autonomy is not the hard piece. It's really just, as you said, sort of getting the right certification, the regulation, making sure that you can fly beyond line of sight. Is that correct in your view? What's the most difficult piece of that?
I think autonomy is not a technology problem. Again, as for the passenger drone, it was never a technology problem. It was a certification and public acceptance problem, and maybe a battery challenge. but not a problem. On the cargo drones, it's also, I think, because you need to be cost efficient, you need to be able to deliver a drone that is highly competitive on price, but still very reliable in operation, because at the end you need to operate 24/7 and easy to manage. So it means you need just to press a button and it does what it's supposed to do. You don't want to have highly sophisticated pilots flying these drones, because then you don't get into a useful business case. So making a drone that is highly competitive, has a high payload, and still is, let's say, absolutely easy to use, that's the challenge. And I haven't seen a lot of drone concepts yet that are there yet. A lot of them are testing, but I haven't seen one being perfect yet. So that's why we also continue to test. We will fly in Saudi Arabia at NEOM in May, doing test flights with the Volodrone version 2. We continue to work with DB Schenker. And what we will also do is, you will see, we will work on a new concept that will be optimized along the criteria that I just described. So you will see that we will have a next generation drone still being prototyped this year, which will be much more competitive on price and towards the criteria of our customers.
And when you say, a lot of what you see sort of isn't quite there yet on this ease of use and sort of like fully, like it sounds like you're saying it's a fully automated process from start to finish. You're saying that there's still, humans in the loop at times where there's not ideal, or what exactly isn't there yet in your mind?
I think there will be humans in the loop for quite a while, also on the cargo drones, just to verify. I think what will be different is you will have more drones per person to be controlled and monitored, but there will still be humans. At least in our case, we believe that we will continue to use humans in the loop for quite a while. I know from a lot of different models across the world, and we are in contact with a company in China that is successfully for years already doing agriculture drones and also food delivery drones. So there are use cases in place where people already did some significant progress, but these are very small drones, which is where a lot is done with off-the-shelf components. It's a total different use case than what we aim for.
So you actually have this advantage because since you're already used to building these larger aircraft that tend to not have off-the-shelf components. Gotcha.
Great. Dirk, is there anything that you think we missed that people need to know about Volocopter before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I think it's what I see in many of the discussions around the world, that a lot of people still believe that air taxis will only fly in 2030s and beyond. And even if we tell them we fly next year in Paris, they look at us like we're a bit crazy. So I think it is important to really understand we're getting there. It's only 16 months from now. And we also, even if there would be a problem, we don't see that we will miss 24. So 24 will be the first year of commercial operation of eVTOLs globally. And then it will be on us to prove that this is efficient, that it is reliable, safe, and that it's also fun to use. And with that, we all really hope that this opens then a total new market, that people will embrace it instead of rejecting it. And I'm very excited that we are part of that story, that we will enable people to get access to it next year.
We're excited too, and we're excited. It's always exciting to see the modeling work that we've done and the analysis. Then the people doing the real hard work, like you, making it a reality and seeing that theory meet practice. And I feel like the evolution here, right? You saw it's like electric cars are now in like the James Bond movies, and now we'll have the Olympics, and then we'll just wait on the next Mission Impossible for the Volocopter appearance.
Yeah, no, we're looking forward to have you on board. Looking forward that you tell us how you like it. And yeah, whenever you're in Germany, please come and visit us. We will fly intensively this year, so you will have a chance to see the Volo City or the Volo region flying. I think that's better than any movie or to get a PowerPoint presentation. So hopefully you can witness how much fun it is to see these vehicles flying, and yeah, hopefully we can welcome you on board of such a vehicle in 24, 25.
Sign me up.
Thanks,
Can't wait.
Dirk.
Thanks.
ARC believes that the information presented is accurate and was obtained from sources that ARC believes to be reliable. However, ARC does not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information, and such information may be subject to change without notice from ARC. Historical results are not indications of future results. Certain of the statements contained in this podcast may be statements of future expectations and other forward-looking statements that are based on ARC's current views and assumptions and involve known and unknown risks and uncertainties that could cause actual results, performance, or events to differ materially from those expressed or implied in such statements.